Welcome. Today we will be reading Lesson 219 in the workbook, and from the text, Chapter 19, Section 3, The Unreality of Sin, paragraphs 1 through 6. And now for Lesson 219. I am not a body, I am free, for I am still as God created me. (199) I am not a body, I am free. I am God's Son. Be still, my mind, and think a moment upon this, and then return to earth, without confusion as to what my Father loves forever as his Son. I am not a body, I am free, for I am still as God created me. What is one now if one is not a body? For that which is without form is beyond all limitations of time and space. Without a shape and without beginning or end, is one both infinite and eternal. In the infinite here-ness and eternal now-ness, the ever here and now is one perfectly free. Shapeless and unbound, is one able to see oneself as a thought within the mind of one source. One is eternal love, everlasting joy, extended and extending. In the stillness does the world disappear as a passing thought, along with the body that seemed to give witness to it. Freed of seeing oneself as a body, and being at the mercy of earthly forces, is one's mind now open to serve the Holy Spirit without limits of any kind. And now for our text reading for today, from Chapter 19, Section 3, The Unreality of Sin, paragraphs 1 through 6. The attraction of guilt is found in sin, not error. Sin will be repeated because of this attraction. Fear can become so acute that the sin is denied the acting out. But while the guilt remains attractive, the mind will suffer and not let go of the idea of sin. For guilt still calls to it, and the mind hears it and yearns for it, making itself a willing captive to its sick appeal. Sin is an idea of evil that cannot be corrected, and yet will be forever desirable. As an essential part of what the ego thinks you are, you will always want it. And only an avenger with a mind unlike your own could stamp it out through fear. The ego does not think it possible that love, not fear, is really called upon by sin, and always answers. For the ego brings sin to fear, demanding punishment. Yet punishment is but another form of guilt's protection. For what is deserving punishment must have been really done. Punishment is always the great preserver of sin, treating it with respect and honoring its enormity. What must be punished must be true. And what is true must be eternal and will be repeated endlessly. For what you think is real, you want, and will not let it go. An error, on the other hand, is not attractive. What you see clearly as a mistake, you want corrected. Sometimes a sin can be repeated over and over, with obviously distressing results, but without the loss of its appeal. And suddenly you change its status from a sin to a mistake. Now you will not repeat it. You will merely stop and let it go unless the guilt remains. For then you will but change the form of sin, granting that it was an error, but keeping it uncorrectable. This is not really a change in your perception, for it is sin that calls for punishment, not error. The Holy Spirit cannot punish sin. Mistakes he recognizes and would correct them all as God entrusted him to do. But sin he knows not, nor can he recognize mistakes that cannot be corrected. For a mistake that cannot be corrected is meaningless to him. Mistakes are for correction, and they call for nothing else. What calls for punishment must call for nothing. Every mistake must be a call for love. What then is sin? What could it be but a mistake you would keep hidden? A call for help that you would keep unheard and thus unanswered. In time, the Holy Spirit clearly sees the Son of God can make mistakes. On this you share his vision. Yet you do not share his recognition of the difference between time and eternity. And when correction is completed, time is eternity. The Holy Spirit can teach you how to look on time differently and see beyond it. But not while you believe in sin. In error, yes, for this can be corrected by the mind. But sin is the belief that your perception is unchangeable, and that the mind must accept as true what it is told through it. If it does not obey, the mind is judged insane. The only power that could change perception is thus kept impotent, held to the body by the fear of changed perception, which its teacher, who is one with it, would bring. When you are tempted to believe that sin is real, remember this. If sin is real, both God and you are not. If creation is extension, the Creator must have extended himself, and it is impossible that what is part of him is totally unlike the rest. If sin is real, God must be at war with himself. He must be split and torn between good and evil, partly sane and partially insane. For he must have created what wills to destroy him, and has the power to do so. Is it not easier to believe that you have been mistaken than to believe in this? The attraction of guilt, we learn in this section, keeps the idea of sin alive and calls one to avenge the mistake through attack and punishment. Punishment appears to give legitimacy to sin, for what requires punishment must be true. And if it is the truth, it will be expected to reoccur again, and hence have continuity. Past sins require future punishment. Thus, past and future are linked together in a continuum of time. One is incapable of going beyond time while one believes in sin. Sin supports the unchangeability of perception and believes one must go along with what the senses give witness to, negating the mind's power to correct and heal, and thus giving outside forces in the world power over the mind.